What happens when the truth is no longer spoken out loud, but buried under fear, hesitation, and silence? This question is not just about culture or politics. It is about the very soul of the church and the lives of countless people looking for direction in a world that has grown more confusing by the day. We stand at a crossroads where the weight of silence is heavier than the risk of speaking, and the danger is not in disagreement, but in avoidance. The subject of same-sex marriage is not simply a debate. It has become a defining test of whether the church will stand with conviction or shrink back in fear. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we cannot deny the urgency of this moment. Same-sex marriage is no longer something whispered about on the margins. It is now an open stage where laws, movements, and opinions collide, demanding clarity. But here lies the danger. When the church stays silent, it does not remain neutral. Every silence preaches a sermon, every hesitation tells a story, and every refusal to address the truth shapes the next generation. What message are we sending if we retreat into comfort while the world boldly redefines what God created? People are not asking for empty words. They are searching for a voice they can trust, a foundation that will not shift beneath their feet. They are desperate for clarity, even when they resist it, because the human heart knows that truth brings freedom. Yet many leaders hesitate, fearing rejection, fearing judgment, fearing the loss of popularity. But history shows us that comfort has never built strength. It is only through courage that the church has ever survived the storms of time. If we choose silence, we choose surrender. If we choose fear, we choose irrelevance. This is not about condemning anyone. It is not about hatred or shame. It is about protecting the meaning of love, guarding the beauty of marriage, and guiding souls toward what heals instead of what destroys. True compassion cannot hide the truth, because compassion without truth leaves people lost. Silence may feel like kindness in the moment, but silence abandons those who are searching for hope. And make no mistake, there are millions searching for answers, searching for peace, searching for something greater than the shifting voices of culture. The question becomes simple yet heavy. Will the church be brave enough to speak before it is too late? This is the reward for staying until the very end of this message. You will discover why your voice, your faith, and your courage matter more now than ever before. You will see that standing in truth is not about division, but about life, freedom, and love that cannot be shaken. The time for hesitation is over. The time for clarity is now. And if the church rises in this moment, it will not only guard truth, it will save generations yet to come. The world has mastered the art of shaping emotions while erasing eternal truths. Everywhere you look, the message is the same. Love is whatever you feel. Freedom is whatever you choose. And boundaries are chains to be broken. It sounds appealing. It feels liberating. But beneath the glitter lies emptiness that no human heart can fill on its own. We see people chasing affirmation, yet never finding peace. We see relationships celebrated loudly, yet collapsing quietly. And through it all, the church was called to be the light that cuts through the fog. But what happens when that light begins to flicker, when it dims itself in the hope of being accepted by the very world it was sent to transform? Marriage was never a human invention. It was not created by governments or movements. It was designed by God as a covenant, a sacred reflection of His love for His people. When culture rewrites that definition, it is not simply expanding love. It is tearing at the very fabric of creation's meaning. And yet, how often has the church allowed fear to silence this truth? How often has it chosen approval over our conviction, applause over courage? The cost of this silence is not measured in criticism avoided, but in souls led astray. When we exchange boldness for comfort, we forfeit the authority entrusted to us. The temptation is strong to echo the voices of culture, to soften the message until it feels harmless, until it sounds like affirmation. But affirmation without truth is poison disguised as kindness. It promises freedom but delivers bondage. It promises wholeness but delivers emptiness. The church was never meant to echo, it was meant to declare. To declare with love, with clarity, and with conviction that truth does not shift with seasons. What God designed cannot be redesigned by human hands without consequences. The pain so many feel today is not born from truth, but from the lies they were told in its absence. Courage is the currency of influence. Without it, the church loses its voice. Without it, it becomes just another institution, blending into the noise of the world. But when it speaks with courage, even in the face of rejection, it becomes a beacon of hope that cannot be ignored. People may resist truth, they may fight against it, but deep down their souls long for it. And when truth is spoken, even the hardest heart recognizes its power. This is the calling of the church right now, not tomorrow, not when the storm has passed, but now. To stand not as an enemy of people, but as a friend of their souls. To love them enough to risk misunderstanding. To protect them enough to endure rejection. To guide them enough to refuse compromise. The price of silence is eternal. The reward of courage is transformation. The question is not if the world will speak, it already is. The question is if the church will answer with a voice unshaken. The weight pressing against the church is not only from the outside, but also from within. The struggle is not just culture pushing against faith, but confusion spreading inside faith communities themselves. A generation is rising that hears constantly about love, but rarely about truth. They are told to trust their feelings, but not warned that feelings can deceive. They are promised acceptance, but not reminded that true love transforms. This gap has created a silent vacuum where culture has rushed in to become the louder teacher, filling hearts with half-truths that sound comforting yet leave them empty. The danger is not open rejection of God's word, but subtle distortion that makes compromise look compassionate. This is why clarity cannot wait. The greatest threat is not anger from the outside world, but apathy within the walls of the church. Congregations that settle for soft words may fill their seats, but they empty their souls. Buildings may look alive, but without conviction, they are hollow. What good is a sanctuary filled with voices if none of them carry courage? What good is worship without obedience or faith without the strength to speak? The hour is late, and the silence inside is more destructive than the noise outside. The enemy of faith is not always hostility, it is often comfort. A half-truth always seems safe. It avoids conflict, pleases crowds, and offers the illusion of harmony. But half-truths cannot hold the weight of eternity. They are fragile, easily broken, and devastating when tested by storms. This generation does not need sugar-coated answers. They need the unshakable foundation of God's design. They need to hear that love is real, but love without truth is a counterfeit. They need to be reminded that affirmation without transformation is not compassion, but abandonment. To tell someone only what they want to hear may spare us discomfort, but it leaves them unprepared for eternity. The responsibility of the church is not to mirror culture, but to guide it. If we remain quiet, the next generation will inherit not truth, but confusion. They will mistake affirmation for freedom and mistake silence for approval. And when they fall into despair, ill they turn if the church has already surrendered its voice. This is why courage must rise again. The church was never designed to blend into the noise of the world, but to stand out with clarity that cannot be ignored. Silence does not save. It enslaves. Only truth can break chains, and only courage can deliver that truth. The call is not for hatred, nor for condemnation, but for boldness rooted in love. Love that refuses to lie. Love that speaks even when it costs something. Love that understands that guiding a soul toward wholeness is worth every rejection, every criticism, and every risk. Without courage, faith is only words. With courage, faith becomes a fire that no storm can extinguish. Truth must never be spoken as a weapon, but as a lifeline. Addressing same-sex marriage is not about labeling people or rejecting them. It is about guiding them toward a love that heals instead of a love that wounds. Many who wrestle with same-sex desires carry deep pain, rejection, and loneliness. They are not enemies to be fought, but souls to be embraced. Not projects to be fixed, but people to be valued. The church's calling is not to throw stones, but to extend hands. It is not to build walls of condemnation, but bridges of restoration. Yet compassion without conviction is powerless. It soothes the surface, but leaves the soul untouched. Love that affirms what destroys is not love at all. True love refuses to lie because lying leaves people trapped. True love points to what restores, even when it is unpopular, even when it is misunderstood. The voice of the church must carry both conviction and compassion. One without the other is incomplete. Conviction without compassion becomes harsh and cold. Compassion without conviction becomes empty and weak. Together they reflect the heart of God, unyielding in truth, yet overflowing in grace. This balance is difficult, but it is not optional. Without it, the church loses its power to heal and its authority to lead. Holding C, conviction and compassion together means embracing people without affirming sin. It means guiding without condemning, welcoming without compromising, and protecting without bending. It means showing that God's design for marriage is not punishment, but protection. Not limitation, but liberation. The church must demonstrate that obedience is not a burden, but a pathway to joy. That surrender to God's design is not chains, but freedom. Many reject truth because they see it only as restriction. It is the church's responsibility to reveal truth as the doorway to life. The challenge is real. Speaking this way will bring criticism from every side. Those who reject God's design will call it hateful, while those who lack compassion will call it compromise. But the measure of the church cannot be found in human approval. It must be found in faithfulness. The moment demands a people who will not bow to fear of labels, who will not shrink back when attacked, and who will not dilute truth for the sake of temporary peace. Peace at the cost of truth is not peace. It is surrender. The call is heavy, but it is clear. The church must rise with both strength and tenderness, both courage and compassion. To fail in either direction is to fail in its mission. If we choose silence, the world will shape the narrative and lives will be lost in confusion. But if we rise with truth in one hand and love in the other, we will not only guard God's design, we will rescue hearts, heal wounds, and show a broken world that real love never hides the truth. The world is shifting faster than ever before. Laws are rewritten, cultural values change overnight, and voices demanding compromise grow louder each day. In this whirlwind, every moment of hesitation by the church strengthens the influence of those who reject God's design. Delay is not harmless. Every day without clarity allows confusion to sink deeper into hearts and minds, shaping lives in silence. The cost of waiting is immeasurable, for every child raised without truth is another soul guided by lies disguised as compassion. The church must understand that time is not its ally. The longer it postpones courage, the more it forfeits its responsibility to protect and guide. The reality is simple yet sobering. The question is not whether the church will face backlash. That is certain. The question is whether the church will remain faithful when backlash comes. To stand boldly will bring accusations, slander, and loss of approval. But courage does not wait for permission. Courage does not look to the majority for validation. Courage is choosing truth when silence feels safer. Without it, the church becomes irrelevant, blending into a world that no longer recognizes its voice. With it, the church becomes unshakable, a light in darkness, a compass in chaos. History has always proven that compromise weakens, but conviction sustains. When the church has chosen comfort over boldness, it has always lost influence. When it has chosen to rise, even in storms, it has always endured. The pressures of today are not new, though they feel overwhelming. Every generation faces its own test of courage. This is ours. To bow would be easy. To rise will be costly. Yet it is only in rising that the church fulfills its purpose. Temporary approval cannot outweigh eternal accountability. The voices of culture may seem dominant, but they are fleeting. The Word of God stands forever. The question before us is urgent. Will the church allow fear of criticism to define its message, or will it allow the fear of God to guide its steps? The weight of generations hangs in the balance. Silence now will create traditions of compromise tomorrow. What is tolerated today will be celebrated tomorrow. What is redefined now will shape the conscience of those yet to be born. If the church does not speak with clarity today, it will inherit regret tomorrow. The window to act is closing, and hesitation is no longer an option. This is a defining moment. Not one for delay or excuses, but one for bold action. The call is clear. The choice is urgent. The church must rise with courage before compromise becomes its legacy. The storm is loud, but the truth is louder. The time is not someday, not eventually, not later. The time is now before the chance to stand is lost forever. The call before the church is not complicated, but it is weighty. It is the call to speak the truth with courage, without delay and without apology. Too often the question asked is, what will people think? But the question that truly matters is, what will God say? Approval from the world may bring comfort for a moment, but silence before God carries a weight that cannot be lifted. Eternity is not shaped by applause, it is shaped by obedience. This is why hesitation is dangerous. To delay is to surrender ground that cannot easily be regained. To soften truth is to betray the very foundation entrusted to us. The responsibility is not simply to preserve a doctrine, but to protect lives. Marriage is not just a tradition, it is a divine structure designed to shield families, to anchor society, and to reflect eternal love. When it is redefined, the damage spreads far beyond individuals. It weakens foundations that hold entire communities together. To remain silent in the face of this redefinition is not neutrality, it is complicity. The church must remember that silence does not spare anyone from pain. It only allows deception to grow deeper, stronger, and harder to uproot. This is why fear of labels must be broken. Words like intolerant, hateful, or outdated will be hurled, but they must not silence conviction. The measure of truth is not found in cultural acceptance, but in divine authority. To shrink back now would be to abandon those who need guidance the most. Many are lost, not because they hate God, but because no one had the courage to show them His design. If the church holds back, those souls remain in chains the only truth can break. It is not love to leave people in the dark. It is not compassion to let them wander without a compass. Faithfulness requires courage, and courage requires sacrifice. There will be criticism, there will be misunderstanding, but there will also be transformation. When truth is spoken with clarity and compassion, hearts are changed, lives are healed, and hope is restored. The power of truth is not in its popularity, but in its permanence. Even if rejected in the moment, it plants seeds that cannot be erased. Those seeds grow in silence until the day a soul is ready to receive them. But they cannot be planted if the church refuses to speak. The time is short, but the mission is clear. The church must rise and declare that God's design is not optional, not negotiable, and not subject to cultural trends. The future of faith depends on this stand. The destiny of countless souls depends on this voice. To stay silent is to fail. To speak is to save. The moment is now. The choice is ours. And the outcome will shape generations. The moment has arrived where the church must choose between silence that pleases people and truth that pleases God. The world has already made its choice. It speaks loudly, confidently, and without hesitation. It celebrates what is against God's design as though it were progress, and it punishes anyone who dares to question it. Yet the church was never meant to compete for applause. It was meant to be a voice of clarity, a voice of courage, a voice that echoes eternity in a culture drowning in confusion. To stay quiet now is to surrender the battlefield without ever lifting a shield. To speak now is to declare that truth is not up for negotiation, that God's word stands even when every human voice tries to rewrite it. The cost of speaking may be heavy, but the cost of silence is unbearable. A church that hides its convictions is a church that loses its influence. A church that softens its message is a church that better aids its mission. If truth is abandoned in order to win approval, what remains is not faith but performance. What remains is not conviction but compromise. And compromise cannot save souls. Compromise cannot heal hearts. Compromise cannot anchor a generation searching for something unshakable. This is why the choice is urgent. Every second matters. Every word matters. Every stand matters. To rise with courage does not mean speaking with anger or hostility. It means speaking with a boldness rooted in love, with a fire that cannot be quenched by fear, with a compassion that refuses to leave people lost in lies. The church must show that truth is not chains but freedom, not punishment but protection, not cruelty but care. When truth is spoken with conviction and compassion, it does not destroy, it restores, it does not condemn, it redeems, it does not push people away, it calls them home. That is the power of standing boldly, and that is the responsibility of this moment. The urgency is not abstract, it is not distant, It is here, pressing against every heart, demanding a response. The window to act is narrowing. If the church delays, the narrative will be written without it, and generations will grow up never hearing the truth spoken clearly. What is tolerated now will be celebrated tomorrow. What is compromised today will become the standard of the future. The church must understand that this is not simply about protecting tradition, but about protecting souls. To hesitate is to hand those souls over to deception. To speak is to give them a chance at freedom. The decision cannot be postponed any longer. The truth must be spoken, not with timidity, but with authority, not with hesitation, but with clarity. The time to act is not tomorrow, not someday, not when the world is ready to listen. The time is now. The voice must rise now. The truth must shine now. If the church stands, chains will break. If it stays silent, chains will tighten. The choice has never been clear. Error and the responsibility has never been greater.